Every morning, Arnaud Langlais and his team scour the stalls at the biggest wholesale fruit and vegetable market in Europe, Langlais in France. Their aim is to gather unsold produce and distribute it to the poor.
We go to the wholesalers, we take pallets for nothing, we sort them and hand them out. Right now it's a bit hit and miss. There are days when we get lots of produce and others when there's less. Anything we can't get free from the wholesalers, we have to buy.
The goods are then sorted at Potager de Marianne, a kind of job creation scheme set up 3 years ago by a national network of what the French call social grocers. The workers, who used to be on the dole, are given 6-month renewable contracts to help them get back into the world of work. It's given new hope for Marie-Jo, who'd been unemployed for 3 years.
I'm happy to be here. At least it helps me while I search for work. And meanwhile, at least I'm doing something, being useful, you see.
The packages are sent to these social grocers and food aid centres all over the Île-de-France region.
Year after year we're dealing with greater volumes. In 2010 we distributed 770 tonnes of fruit and veg. In 2009 we did 400 tonnes, so we doubled that last year. And this year we'll do a bit more than that. There's more demand every year. And the food aid organisations are being called upon more and more. There are lots more working class people now who are calling for help feeding their families.
With the financial crisis, all charities have seen demand rise. This is Restos du Cœur, or Restaurants of the Heart. Mothers, pensioners, students and low-paid workers are all swelling the ranks of the poor. And since 2008, it has seen the number of people coming through its doors rise by 25%.
Oh, with my pension, I just can't do it. With less than 600 euros a month to live, pay the rent and everything, you just can't.
For me, once I've paid everything, I'm left with 160 euros per month for everything, for clothes and everything. Luckily, there are these Restos du Cœur. Without them, you could die. And on top of that, they want to cut the food aid.
Et en plus, ils veulent diminuer les aides.
A quarter of the food distributed here comes from the European Programme for the Most Disadvantaged, or PEAD. The programme's the brainchild of the French comedian Coluche, who also founded Restos du Cœur. In the 1980s, he convinced the European Commission to hand over surplus EU produce for food aid. Today, surplus production only accounts for a quarter of the needs. The rest is bought from the budget of the Common Agricultural Policy. And that's what's been challenged by 6 EU states: Germany, Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, Britain and the Czech Republic. They believe the aid should come from individual states' social policies.
We can start discussing 2014 to 2020. We think that food aid, food security is a European issue. We've always been in favour of these methods of regulation, because today stocks are at their lowest, but we don't know what they're going to be in 5 or 6 years. But we always recommend that there be the possibility to buy in the market in reasonable proportions from the same budget. We haven't got time to discuss this new allocation for 2012-2013. For that year, there's no alternative, no other solution, because the aid agencies are facing a situation they've never seen before.
The current PEAD budget is 480 million euros, scarcely 1% of the Common Agricultural Policy budget. But that could fall by 80% if it's limited simply to European farm surpluses. PEAD helps feed 18 million people in Europe and represents half of the supplies in food banks that hand out goods to charities in 19 European countries. The French Federation of Food Banks believes it unthinkable to return the problem to the national policies of individual member states.
Today, there are 80 million poor people, 80 million people living below the poverty line in Europe. That's the biggest European nation. It's impossible to deny this reality on a European level, while it is possible to dream up very sophisticated mechanisms to build European solidarity to save the banks.
Pour monter des solidarités européennes pour sauver les banques, dans la mentalité.
Among those who believe in Europe, who have a European mentality, it's impossible to deny the need to establish policies of solidarity on a European level.
Nécessité de mettre en place une politique de solidarité au niveau européen.
The president of the European Federation of Food Banks says there's an imbalance of need, and PEAD accounts for up to 90% of aid handed out in Poland and Hungary.
The advantage of this, as it stands, a European programme, is that it implies solidarity between the richest nations and those with much less. To return the programme, fully or partially, to the national level means there'd be no more solidarity. As a European citizen, and I choose my words carefully, that hurts me.
If the current ruling limiting the PEAD's aid to surplus European farm produce isn't quickly modified, as the European Commission has recommended, the charities worry they won't be able to respond to the needy next year. And at one food distribution centre in Paris, they're also noticing a continuing fall in donations from businesses and private individuals.
You know, and it's not because the camera is here, but we've come back from the collection with some packets of cereal and a few kilos of sugar. I'm not saying people don't want to give when we make food collections, but they can't. It's not like it was before. So for us, 95% of our products come from the EU.
Ils veulent pas donner quand on fait des collectes alimentaires, mais ils peuvent pas, c'est pas comme avant. Donc pour nous, c'est 95%, c'est Union européenne.
This year, the number of people asking for help here has doubled. Geraldine started volunteering after finding a job as a care assistant. But with 4 children and rent of €600, her income still isn't enough without resorting to food aid.
I work on short-term contracts, not a permanent job, so they might call me, they might not. When the phone doesn't ring and it's hard to make ends meet with my children, I come back here as a client and work as a volunteer at the same time. There's no choice. Life's too expensive, too many charges, and once you've paid for everything, you realize you can't allow yourself to shop for the things you used to buy.
Some in the field believe cutting the PEAD's resources would trigger a humanitarian catastrophe.
We really hope that any changes will take into account the rise in poverty, because the PEAD programme goes back several years. But in the meantime, misery and poverty have increased. In other words, it needs even more cash. People should know that all of the PEAD food aid amounts to just €1 per European per year.
Toute l'aide du PEAD ne représente seulement qu'1 € par Européen par an.
And when you see the billions that they tell us are spent on this or that, well, it's well and truly inhuman.